Hey gang, Gene Lyons here. At the time of this recording, the legendary hacker Kevin Mitnick was battling pancreatic cancer in hospital. Since then, he has sadly passed away, and we'd like to dedicate this episode to his memory. Hack the Planet.
Remember when we first met John McClane? Argyle picked him up from the plane and took him down the Nakatomi Tower at the Christmas party. And the terrorists were overzealous, but it was sweet when they killed Ellis. And with a little help from Alan, John McClane kicked ass.
Welcome back to Shat the Movies, the podcast where we answer the question, were the movies we loved when we were growing up really that good? Have you ever caught yourself thinking, why don't they make movies like they used to? Can you still remember spending your Friday night searching for the perfect movie rental at Blockbuster Video? Do you know what Blockbuster Video is? If you answered yes, this is the podcast for you. I am one of your hosts, Gene Lyons. Alongside me is my co-host, Big D, look at that pooper, Dick Ebert.
Good evening.
And each week we took a look back in time and decided if our favorite films still hold up. The movies we cover are chosen by you, the listeners, who generously commission the films you love. If you'd like to see all the movies we have covered, will cover, want to choose one for yourself, please visit shatpod.com and have a look. At the end of each podcast, we'll provide you, the audience, with the number of wipes each movie takes to get off your respective butts. So thank you so much for listening. If you have not already, hit that subscribe button and share it with a friend. It's how we help the podcast grow. Additionally, subscribe to our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Westworld, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, True Detective, Lovecraft Country, and Watchmen. Find all the information and past episodes at shatpod.com/TV. And finally, if you'd like to hang out with us live, we have a YouTube channel. You can follow and subscribe. It's Shat the Movies on YouTube. We play video games, we host watch parties, and we edit this podcast live. All that being said, Big D, what movie are we reviewing today?
Gene, tonight is one of those films that you and Ash had been hyping up for a long time. I have no experience with it, so I'm really, really excited to go someplace that I'm not familiar with, experience it the first time, and see if you guys were actually preaching about a film that deserved our respect. So when Jody wrote in and she commissioned this film, I was very excited. I pumped up the refresh rate, on my 14-inch thick laptop computer. I made sure that my PCI bus was ready. I got my cool clothes on. We're going to head out to the Colonel. And Gene, you and I, we're going to hack the planet. And that can mean only one thing. We're reviewing the 1995 cyberpunk thriller Hackers.
And Jody wrote in with a manifesto. Said, to the world of movie critique, this is our world now, the world of the trope and the shtick. We make use of streaming services sometimes without paying for what could be dirt cheap if it wasn't run by profiteering gluttons. Yeah. And they call us shatters. We look for banter, Big D accents. We seek after a peek at the host's personal lives and a podcast that sounds like us. We exist without skin color, nationality, or religious bias. Well, I guess we have those things, but we get along. And they call us shatters. You get the film degrees, write columns, tell us what movies to watch, and try to make us believe it's for our own good. Yet we're the shatters. Yes, I am a shatter. My crime is that of nostalgia. My crime is that of judging movies and podcasts by creativity, emotional impact, and entertainment value. Yes, I am a shatter, and this is my manifesto. Hey, crew, I was obsessed with this movie when it came out. When Ash mentioned that no one had commissioned it, I had to add it to the list. The outdated hacker lingo is hilarious. The stick it to the man plot spoke to my 15-year-old self, and the style made me think that this is what the future would actually look like. Ultra cool. Also, hashtag my Angelina Jolie. She is on fire in this movie. I would give it a 1.5. I watch it whenever I cross paths with it. Now, Big D, hit that trailer. Jody in Iowa. Well, Hackers is a 1995 crime thriller starring Johnny Lee Miller, Angelina Jolie, Matthew Lillard, Lorraine Bracco, and Fisher Stevens. Made in the mid-1990s when the internet was just starting to become popular among the general public, the film follows a group of high school hackers and their involvement in an attempted theft. The film received mixed reviews from critics and underperformed at the box office upon release, but has gone on to achieve cult classic status. Now, before we get started this, I want to highlight the fact that this was a $20 million budget that grossed $7.5 million when all was said and done. So I'm going to go into this review just admitting that not everyone necessarily is going to be with a positive view that Jody and I have of Hackers. And as far as my background with this movie, grab yourself a can of Jolt, have yourself a seat, because this is going to be a long story. From the first time I saw a PC, Big D, it was an Amiga in 1988. I don't know if you remember those. Commodore made those. So I'm about the same age as Jody.
I do.
I was obsessed. It was my cousin's friend's computer. I would go over anytime I could to just play with it, look at it, listen to it. And in 1992, so 4 years later, my family bought its first PC. And they're like, where are we going to put it? Should we put it in the living room? A lot of families did that in the 80s. It was weird. If you guys can imagine this for you younger kids, there was like the family computer. And it just sat like either in the office or sometimes in the kitchen. They had like a nook for it, or in the living room. My family, I begged to say, I'm going to be using it the most. Can we please put it in my bedroom? And they did.
Oh.
So I would tinker with it. I was learning Write Basic, and one day at the computer store, we had computer stores, yes, where you'd go to buy like software and floppy disks and shit. I picked up a local computer zine. Big D, I don't know if you guys had those like when you were a kid, like at the computer store, you had it was a magazine that was just local to your area, like a local printer would make it with a guide to like all the computer stores and then tips and tricks, stuff like that.
No, it sounds like you were deep into the culture.
Yeah, man. Yeah, dude.
I was a normie. I didn't have access to
I was
stuff.
Elite, man.
Oh.
So there was this local computer zine, and in the back, you know how like they have like personal ads like in the back of magazines.
Oh, don't even say it. It was like a gang, people trying to create like a club, like a hacker group.
They had a BBS listing.
Oh no!
So we all had dial-up modems. So the BBS listing was all the phone numbers that you could call that were people's bulletin board systems. And this was a system that would usually run on like one computer at somebody's house, and they had a dedicated phone line. And so you would call in with your modem, you would connect to their bulletin board system. You would, log in. And at first they weren't connected to the internet really. It was just, that was it. That was the hub. So I could write a message to Big D. I can clock in at like 10 a.m. I could write Big D a message. Hey, Big D, good to see you. Did you check out Hackers? Great movie. Send it to him. And then the next time he logged in the BBS, he'd be like in his inbox, there's a message from Gene, and he could see it. That's what we did.
Yeah, it's pretty advanced for the day.
There were other things. There were file libraries where you could go and like share like naughty photos. The Anarchist Cookbook was generally on most of these sites where you could download it and check it out. And then there were like text-based video games, Pimp Wars. And you would go and you'd make your pimp character, and it would ask you, you can only do like prompts like how many hoes do you want to buy this week too? And then you would compete with each other on that game. It was a lot of fun. So I hooked up the modem. I picked the first one just kind of at random that was on the list, and I dialed in. And this bulletin board system was called Chuck Woolery's Wienerbarn of Science. And I had to create a handle. What's your name? And I went with 31N5T31N. I was writing in KRAD. I was that cool. I was Einstein.
Oh.
And from those like messaging systems, I started getting invited to parties, making friends that way. And again, I wasn't old enough to drive, so people would come pick me up in their vans, the back of their cars or whatever. Very, very dangerous shit. We'd meet up at coffee shops. That's when I started going to Rocky Horror Picture Show, because people were really into Rocky Horror Picture. There's a big overlap between the cyber community in Arizona and the goth community. And I just really wanted to be as cool as all the other bulletin board system kids. So flash forward 3 more years, and Hackers comes out. And it just kicks that entire obsession to overdrive. And again, this is something that I don't think is as easy to imagine now, because movies are so much more, it's sequels and blockbusters. And this doesn't really happen all that often. A subculture is fairly underground and develops, and they immediately turn it into this major motion picture with a pretty impressive cast and a pretty big budget. And so I went out, I bought the soundtrack. I bought the soundtrack, by the way, was on 2 CDs. It was that big. And I bought the DVD, and I wanted so badly to be Crash Override. It influenced my fashion decisions, my social decisions, everything in my life. So this was a massive, it was a landmark movie in the vein of Interview with the Vampire, as far as my life goes.
But Hollywood always, they have a history of cashing in on whatever the big fad is. I mean, when inline skates, got to do an inline skate movie. Oh, buy BMX, let's do BMX Bandits. It's what Hollywood does.
Do you think, though, that like they're still doing that? Like, or is it too risky for a studio to be like, oh, there's a trend, let's jump on it immediately, right? Why is there no major K-pop movie?
There's a movie coming out, Gran Turismo, about a kid who becomes a Formula One racer because he plays a video game.
But I think they tested that over years. They saw what Mario Brothers was doing. They saw what like all these other Tomb Raider, right? They've been testing this for a while. That's just the video game genre. Much like comic book movies were fairly rare until Marvel really cracked the code, right? And DC kind of dabbled.
I think if anything, we've become a little more boring. There are none of these real big fads that come out. Everything is kind of quick, fleeting. It's no longer where you go out and your hobby becomes your persona. You're not going to go out and buy your BMX gear or your skateboard gear and become a skater. It doesn't happen like that. But this movie, it's a PSA for hacking. If anything, if this is an illegal, illicit trade that is the police are coming after you, this would make every kid. Imagine if they did a movie like this about drug dealing. Right. Everyone's like, yeah, man, drugs, they just free your mind. We're going to keep away from the man.
That's a fucking genius parallel because, again, with hacking, you're saying like, oh, like it's a victimless crime, right? The same with drugs. I mean, like, they're not killing anybody. They're just dealing drugs.
No, this is like what Top Gun did for the Navy. This had to have led to billions of dollars in fraud and countless misery from people because it made it cool. Everybody wanted to be it. And you mentioned that this was more than just a disappointment. And I think it wasn't the total movie's fault because Hackers was released on September 15th in 1995. It was between the weeks with Seven. This came out, then Showgirls and Usual Suspects. If you don't remember Showgirls, that was a big thing in the news about it getting an X rating, and it was the big sensational press. So everybody, of course, went to see that. And I don't think anybody had a chance to see this. It was never going to be a hit. It only opened up in 1,800 theaters. That is roughly like 30% of what these other big movies were. So the opening weekend had no chance. I have no memory of this movie at all. I don't think I saw a commercial. Nobody talked about it. Everyone was talking about Showgirl and how she was naked and Seven, the murders, how violent it was, or the Usual Suspects being like, wow. And I wish that Ashley was here because Ashley gushed over this movie. She gushed, all over it. And I wanted her to explain herself because I need a defense attorney. There should be a counselor here who's going to stand up and defend this movie to me, the normie. I mean, because at this point I was in my 20s. I wish she was here.
Ash isn't here, but I'll do my best to defend Hackers while still remaining objective and give my most balanced, and it was tough to be balanced on this one, review of Hackers. Let's break into that Gibson and hit the trailer.
Hidden beneath the world we know is the world they inhabit.
Dave?
Yeah, Mom?
What are you doing?
I'm taking over a TV network.
Well, finish up, honey, and get to sleep.
They're hackers.
Hackers penetrate and ravage private and publicly owned computer systems.
Hack the planet!
Hack the planet!
It's not just something they do.
Sure this sweet machine's not going to waste?
Are you challenging me?
It's who they are.
I win, you wear a dress on our date.
And if I win, so do you.
They can crack any code. And get inside any system.
Hello?
Mr. Gill, according to our records, you're dead.
What?
But this time,
Come here, look at this.
It's some kind of virus.
Unless $5 million is transferred to the following account, I will capsize 5 oil tankers.
they just hacked the wrong guy.
Game's over.
Whoever wrote this needs somebody to take the fall.
He's about to commit the perfect computer crime.
You've created a virus that's going to cause a worldwide disaster.
And they're about to take the blame.
A hacker planted the virus.
But it's the perfect cover.
We're being framed.
Can we be allies? I don't play well with others.
Oh, wow, we are fried.
Okay, let's nail it.
Now,
You're not good enough to beat me.
Yeah, maybe I'm not. But we are.
they're the only ones who can prevent a catastrophe.
I know how to stop this guy. They'll trace you like that.
Are you nuts? Come at me!
Unlike any the world has ever seen.
Never send a boy to do a woman's job.
Hackers of the world unite.
Cops on the building. I need more time.
This is the end, my friend.
United Artists welcomes you to the new world. Hackers.
On August 10th, 1988, 11-year-old Dade Zero Cool Murphy's family is fined $45,000 for his crashing of New York Stock Exchange computers. He is banned from computers until he is 18 years old. On his 18th birthday, Dade hacks into a local TV station and changes the broadcast to an episode of The Outer Limits. When another hacker counters Dade's attack, Dade identifies himself as Crash Override. At school, Dade becomes part of a group of hackers: Ramon the Phantom Freak Sanchez, Emmanuel Serial Killer Goldstein, Paul Lord Nikon Cook, Joey Pardella, and Kate Acid Burn Libby, the hacker who kicked him out of the TV station earlier.
So, Gene, you mentioned how this movie made you want to become a hacker. You got into technology. For me, because of my age, David in War Games, that inspired me to get a Commodore 64 for Christmas in '83. I set up my little bookcases and cabinets with like a printer and stuff, trying to look just like it.
Yes.
But unfortunately, the way I am, I have ADHD. I can't focus on anything very long. I never became proficient at coding. I just scratched the surface in what it could be. And in this movie, their inspiration for the character of Dade it's based on a real life kid who was inspired also to go out there and do some legendary shit. His name was Kevin Mitnick. And at the age of 12, this kid went out, convinced his bus driver that he had a school project that needed a hole punch. So he went and bought the hole punch that the bus drivers used in LA, and eventually started giving free tickets to everyone who he had found in a dumpster, some ones that were punched. By 16, he was hacking into computer networks. He eventually got convicted. While he was convicted, he then hacked into Pacific Bell's voicemail. He became a fugitive for 2.5 years. He then broke into multiple networks, started stealing software, intercepting passwords, tampering with computer systems. He was arrested in '95, went to jail, was released. And guess what? He all of a sudden becomes the good guy.
Yep.
He is now the consultant. He is a famous author. He is a convicted hacker, a felon. And what I find ironic is that throughout this entire movie, they're the rebels. They're the good guys standing up. All of them eventually sell out and become the establishment.
Yeah, Mitnick Security. He's the plague. He went from being zero cool to being the plague. Big D, you mentioned that opening flashback in the movie. The cops are all running in to arrest Zero Cool. And I remember this movie having lots of style. Like, I was obsessed with the style of this film. And so I was immediately worried when this movie opens, because it looks low budget. Like, you got like generic police thugs, no badges on their uniforms. Like, they're rushing in with like these plastic M16s, bad costumes. It's slow motion. They're raiding this house. And then, you get the reveal in the courtroom as the camera's panning. It's coming. It's like, this guy's very dangerous and he's a menace to society and we can't have people like this in America. And then the camera pans down and it's a little boy. Tee-hee. It is hard to overemphasize how guys like Mitnick were heroes to hacker wannabes in the 90s. I wanted to be that kind of cool, to show off my skills. It was the Wild West, right? It was a Wild West where no one was going to get shot. And the thought of using your computer and your phone, two things that we all had in our homes, so those of us who were privileged enough to have them, to be mischievous, that was incredibly appealing. So Zero Cool was very cool to me.
It's how you became a legend back then. Like another movie, Pump Up the Volume, like pirate radio. Every kid wanted to be that outlaw where everyone like you could become famous. This was the first time, there was no social media, where you could gain status and you could become like a cult hero. And during this time also, it was a big thing, Gene. There was 2 famous hackings at this point. We're going to get the station here in a little bit. But there were 2 real world. One was Captain Midnight. It was this engineer who got pissed off because HBO was raising their prices. So he hijacked the HBO satellite feed and broadcast for 15 minutes during the Falcon and the Snowman,
yes.
a screen that said something like, your prices are outrageous. Hey, you better be careful, like Cinemax and whatever another one was. And then there was even a better one. It was in Chicago in '87. We still don't know who it is. Somebody hijacked the Chicago feed and broadcast a couple minutes of a guy in a Max Headroom mask. Do you remember Max Headroom?
Yeah.
Like the twitchy and for like 15 minutes, I think, the guy spouted on about like very much like we get here with Razor and Blade. So this time, every kid had a chance to be a hero.
I'm starting to put the pieces together here, Big D. So you got your Commodore 64 in the Christmas of 83. This Max Headroom attack happened in 87.
No, yeah.
And then you got rid of that computer in 88 because you had ADHD. I think we all know what's going on here, Big D. Or should I say Max?
No, I wish I had the skills to actually do it. I was too lazy.
Now, although the opening of the movie didn't look great, I'm happy to report that after reviewing all of Hackers, most of it still looks cool. Angelina Jolie's outfits, mwah. Her haircut, her makeup, still hot. Lord Nikon, Phantom Freak, they're still oddly fashionable. Like, you could pull those guys out right now and people be like, yeah, that guy looks cool. Crash Override's outfits, they border on like sci-fi construction working soldier who might be on the spectrum. But Johnny Lee Miller, he still has a charm about him. He's a good looking kid, right? And then there's the environments that they created. Their party spot, it's rad. It's got rollerblade ramps and giant video game screens. Like, I'd hang out there. Razor and Blade, as you mentioned, Big D, the Hack the Planet TV hosts, those guys would be TikTok stars in 2023. Like, they still have an appeal. And the movie even has a sweet ass KLR with like hot print graphics on it for good measure. That bike, when I saw it, I like jumped out of my seat. They don't make bikes that look like that anymore. It sounds great. It looks great. Angelina Jolie looks great on it. I'm into it.
What's odd is normally in the movies like this that are promoting a subculture, the kids in the subculture are the outcasts. They're the ones being ridiculed. You see the BMX kids being made fun of, the skateboard kids being made fun of. Why aren't you normal? Why aren't you? Here, you're right. They look cool. Yeah, they look ridiculous, but nobody makes fun of them. They're smarter than everyone else. They don't get hassled and bullied. You talk about their hangout. Their hangout looks like Splinter's hideout from Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles with the skate ramps going around. It looks like a pretty cool life.
When you're saying that they look stupid, though, like I get like serial killer, he's got a thing going on, whatever. Angelina Jolie, though, like, come on.
Oh, she looks, she goes
just great.
Yeah. So Zero Cool, he's walking around with like a leg holster, like a belt on his upper thigh. You got there Matthew Lillard, Serial, with like the pigtails. The clothes obviously was for the period, but it doesn't. There's something disingenuous about it. Like there was an adult costume professional Hollywood being like, oh, let's mix these things up.
Oh, 100%. Yes.
None of it seemed organic.
I also like that Crash Override is living in this like tiny New York apartment with like the tiniest closet. He's got quite a wardrobe.
What kid would complain? You're a hacker. You 18, you have access to a computer. You're going to New York, LA. You're going to be around other smart people into hacking. And he says, oh, we don't have any grass, Mom. Dude, shut up. You're now in this cool club. You're in a good high school. You're meeting some of these other world-class hackers. This is great. And anyone who watches this today, I recommend go back and watch it, because in 2023, this movie's depiction of technology, even 95 technology and graphic user interfaces, it's ridiculous. It's laughable. Today, kids, they're born with a tablet in their hand. Everything throughout the house is connected. They have smart toys. Everything's got a battery. But if you can put yourself back in 95, only 35% of the houses had computers. And then even in 97, which was the first year I could find stats, only 18% had internet access.
That's wild.
So the world they're in, we assume that technology was always ubiquitous. It was everywhere. At this time, this was groundbreaking to everybody. And last week, Gene, you mentioned about the ozone layer being the fear in Highlander 2, about that everybody in the 90s thought the ozone layer is going to be gone. We're all going to have our faces melted off. At this time, anyone who was over 35, technology had to have freaked them out. They had to have felt like they're immediately going to become obsolete. They're going to lose their job. Hackers are going to come in. They're going to bring the world to their knees. This was a real threat, I think, for anyone who was over 35 at the time.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, though. Aside from living like in a low information environment, that's the one thing that I'm like the most jealous of. Could you imagine being our age, but like there's like no internet? And we're just like, oh, I guess I saw it on the news or read it in the newspaper. That's about all the information I'm getting on stuff. I went to the library. The stress levels must have just been like absolutely nothing.
Dude, I remember how hard it was that my friend and I had heard a rumor that Cindy Crawford was in Playboy a few years earlier.
Yes.
We took the train into Manhattan, went to the main library, into their microfiche, and pulled up the Cindy Crawford issue of Playboy just to see it. Today, you'd Google it. There's no hunt anymore for the forbidden fruit. So there is something to just the elegance of that world without technology.
Yeah, but to answer your question though about the older people being like terrified, my mom, she was a lot like Dade's mom or Joey's mom. She didn't care that I was doing nerdy computer shit and drinking Jolt Cola in my room.
Wait, do you mean oblivious? He just did jail time, or he just got off of it. And she says, "What are you doing, Dade?" "Oh, I'm hacking into a TV station." "Okay, don't stay up too late." She's oblivious.
That's just realistic for how parents were. She like my mom's concerns were more in line with her concerns, which was, why aren't you staying up all night? Like, you need to go to sleep. Or that random guys like serial killer were climbing in my bedroom window, like goth Vinny Del Pinos. And she was concerned that I was hogging up the phone, right? Your modem's always on. We're trying to make phone calls. People can't call us if you're on the computer. What a lot of people who didn't hack or phish in the 1990s don't understand is how much fucking effort it took. And that's why that's why parents didn't really have to worry about it that much. It was the opposite of what you see in hackers. You had to spend hours just to accomplish something stupid. Like, it took me fucking weeks, maybe even months, to go in to the Tempe Public Library system and mark a book returned that wasn't returned. Like, that was like a crown. I think that might have been my crowning achievement, was getting into a library and changing a book status. Like that. And that was it took time. It took a lot of consultation. I had to like ask a million people for help.
Jesus.
So the shit that they're pulling off, like, I think parents understand that's not happening with the average kid.
So when you pulled off that major caper, is that when you earned the Einstein moniker?
Yeah.
Was that it?
I think that's when I decided I didn't want to do this anymore.
Yeah. But I like that the movie explains away what I thought was going to be a big plot hole. When Dade all of a sudden gets a computer, I'm like, how is he going to make up for 7 years of experience? And he pulls out. He's been reading. He's been studying. He's doing exactly what you said. He has stayed up to date in the technology. He may not have actually been doing it, but that was how you hacked. You got a library card.
To prove his skills, Joey breaks into a Gibson supercomputer owned by Ellingson Mineral Corporation. His intrusion is brought to the attention of computer security officer Eugene the Plague Belford. Plague realizes the file Joey downloaded is his worm plague inserted to defraud Ellingson, claiming the file is the code to the Da Vinci computer virus that will capsize an oil tanker fleet. Plague enlists the U.S. Secret Service to recover the file. Joey is arrested and hides the disk containing the file. So, Big D, you talked about how Crash Override is keeping his skills sharp. Early in the film, I was very confused as to how he spent 7 years offline and then he just hopped back online like nothing had changed between 1988 and 1995. Let's talk about some of the things that happened during that period. For one, the World Wide Web, like that appeared in 89. And for those of you not in the know, the internet and the web are not the same thing, right? The internet is much bigger than the web's just a part of it. It's a way to access data from the internet, but it's not all of it, right? So email is also the internet. Web browsers showed up in 1993. So he missed that whole thing. Websites grew from 130 to 100,000. Right, during that time. Fucking Linux launched, okay? Lots of big developments that Crash wasn't allowed to touch a fucking keyboard. But I quickly stopped caring about that when I heard Crash Override, Serial Killer, Lord Nikon, and Phantom Freak gushing over Acid Burn's laptop instead of looking at her boobies.
Yeah.
This thing, they're like, oh man, it's got a 28.8 modem. And that was very exciting to a young Gene Lyons because at the time I had a 14.4 modem and that was like considered pretty cutting edge. For those of you who were fortunate enough to skip the whole dial-up modem era, 28.8, that's 28.8 kilobytes per second. So this podcast right now, I'm looking at the speed test. I'm doing 56 mega, not kilo. So since this movie came out, a normal internet connection is 2,000 times faster than what was considered fast enough, so impressive that it could be mentioned in a movie in 1995, and elite hackers would be like, holy shit, 28.8.
But Gene, did you ever spray paint your keyboard? That seems a bit counterproductive. Wouldn't it make it sticky?
I felt like the move that they would do before they even did that was go to mechanical keyboards. I think it's a really, really bad idea to put that camo print. And he's really into that camo print.
He likes it. But Gene, you mentioned parents seem to always put the computer in their living room or kitchen. It's because it's a smart move. The computer is a dangerous place. It lets the devil into your house, Gene. It lets you like access forbidden fruits. You might hack. If you do it in a public place, at least you were forced then. Your parents could see what you were doing. You couldn't stay up till 4 a.m. Yes, you're hogging up the phone line, but you're right there. But this movie, the problem I have, and I can understand, I've already said, houses in the US, very few had them. Internet didn't become available until later. So they have to figure out a way. How are we going to display all these aspects of hacking and the computer basics to people who don't understand? What is RAM? What is ROM? What is bus speed? What is the kernel? Nobody knows anything. So what they chose to do was, let's make it hyper stylized. Let's make it look cool. Let's tronify everything. And they go over the top. Everything from network hacking, it makes it look like it's a virtual space. In the beginning, when we're introduced to Dade flying into the city, we see almost that he's the chosen one. He almost like he sees the code and he's reading the matrix. The city lights turn into skyscrapers of virtual data. It's like a circuit board, like a motherboard. We're flying through this space. And it's kind of laughable now when you look at it. But movies at the time, I thought, you think 95, okay, we're getting close to, I remember in 98, I was in college, I was on the internet. Yes, the browsers and websites were laughable, but I would never have imagined that this was still like Tron or Lawnmower Man or Weird Science or Johnny Mnemonic. The way they're visualizing it shows how ignorant people were to what was really going on.
Yeah, but it's so slick. Like, it reminds me of, did you ever get those Mind's Eye DVDs when you were like doing drugs? Like, I would like get ecstasy and they'd be like, all right, dude, bust out the Mind's Eye DVD. That's what it looks like. I actually regret not watching this movie on drugs. And Big D, I'm embarrassed to say that anytime I'm flying out of a city at night, I still play Orbital's Halcyon and on my headphones. I imagine I'm Crash Override. I look down out of the window and I turn those city blocks into a motherboard in my head. I love this scene. It gets me at an emotional core level. But I will admit, like, to prove I'm objective, the sounds are fucking ridiculous. Like, everything in this environment is whoosh, bling, zoom. As if Dade can hear the electrons zipping through the hardware. And I imagine, you said, you know, how many kids were influenced by this movie. I imagine there were so many disappointed children who are like, all right, mom, I want to get a computer. And they got it. And it's just a single green prompt on a black screen. Like, okay, so that's hacking.
Yeah, but that's what you got to do.
Yeah.
I joined the Army thinking it was going to be all fun and excitement. Like everything was jumping out of planes and shooting guns and blowing shit up. That's not what you get. Yeah, you this is like the gateway. You get them into hacking, then they realize that hacking in reality, it's boring. It's not exciting with the graphic user interface and like flaming text coming up as you're doing battle to hack into a TV station. Real hacking, it's just sitting there typing line after line of code. It's a lot of like trial and error. You know, you don't get to see like, ooh, the new virus of database would represent like an animated character like over the stream with text. I don't know if the hackers also had to do another degree in creative animation, like where they were creating GIFs and these video animations. I mean, it looks cool, but I don't know if you were a fan of Mr. Robot at all.
Never watched it.
I like it. And I think what they do really well is they represent the boring nature of hacking to people who don't understand it, the non-technical, in a way that you do a lot of inner monologue. You hear what he's thinking as he's typing, as he's trying to circumvent security. And you get to understand it in a way that's exciting without an interface. It's just a command line prompt, you know? But what I like is that even you look back in 95, all the way to today, the biggest threat to a network security, it's not hacking through a security flaw. It's social engineering. And if you go back to even Kevin Mitnick, who we talked about, he socially engineered that bus driver to give him a hole punch. Today, this is the biggest flaw. It's calling in, it's getting a secretary or somebody who pretend to be someone. And yes, Dade does this. He's cheesy. Hey, this is Mr. Eddie Vedder from accounting. And I just had a power surge here. Yeah, my home is wiped out, all of my files from work on it. Listen, I'm having big troubles. Do you know anything about computers? Oh, no, you don't? Okay, right. Well, my BLT drive on my computer just went AWOL. And I got a big problem due tomorrow from Mr. Kawasaki. And if he doesn't get it in, you know, he's going to commit Harry Carey. You know, these Japanese management techniques. And it works. So today it would be, you need to be a little more knowledgeable, but social engineering works.
It works because Norm, the security guard, had the modem right in front of him on his desk. That's a great place to put your fucking modem to your entire TV network, is right in front of the security guard. I think we need to remind people of some of the things we witnessed in this movie, getting to like that graphic treatment. When Crash Override and Acid Burn have their first encounter, they're fighting over the TV station's automated systems. And it's literally two hackers who are remotely controlling robot hands that are fighting, like physically fighting over VHS tapes, while their screens are displaying taunts like Acid Burn says, S-E-Z, leave before you are expunged, in like flaming letters. It makes sense, because how else are you going to make hacking look exciting other than using a soundtrack that involves voodoo people and vintage sci-fi clips? Like, that was kind of a cool little montage. It worked for me.
Yeah, they turned it into a form of physical combat. You're fighting these robot arms over the tapes and the cutting. It's exciting. It's fast-paced, and there's a lot going on.
There's a certain panache to it as well, that they keep cutting back to the way that Crash Override's little mind works, where he sees everything in like old clips, right? So like when he sees Acid Burn for the first time, when he sees Kate for the first time, he's kind of like, it's very sexual. And then the next, like a comic book. And then the next time he sees her, he wants to strangle her because of the pool trick. And even in this montage where they're fighting over the tapes, you know, you've got like clips from, it looks like, you know, there's claymation dinosaurs and there's Outer Worlds. I really like that. And before I move on, I need to correct myself before anybody writes in. When I was talking about kbps, I accidentally said kilobytes. It's kilobits. So please don't write in. I know the difference. Sorry. Big D, did you catch the obscene amount of product placement in this movie? There was, at my count, Jolt Cola, Virtuality Group. Those were those early headsets that the Plague is wearing. UPS delivering the laptop. U-Haul, Timex, Casio, The Vitamin Shop, AT&T, Suzuki, Quicksilver, Supreme. I didn't even know Supreme was around back then. Sony, Fujifilm, FedEx, Pan Am, Panasonic, Nikon, Nokia, the phone one that triggers off the whole like hacking wave around the world, Peroni beer, Apple, Motorola, Moet, McDonald's, JVC, Durex condoms, Dunkin' Donuts, Coca-Cola, Cheetos, Kawasaki, and of course, probably the biggest sponsor of the movie, Rollerblade.
But I think it's smart. It's an investment in the future. You want to befriend the hacker community. If you are a corporate company, if you're a big, get out there, be like in the movie to where you're seen as something cool. You're a friend. Hey, I'm a friend of hackers. Don't hack me. We're on your side. Go hack Honda. Go hack somebody else. You know, don't hack us. Leave us alone, hackers.
Hack the rest of the planet.
Yeah, go hack Burger King. We're McDonald's. Come on, you like eating our fries.
At least Serial Killer does. Dade and Kate compete to harass Secret Service agent Richard Gill, who was involved in Joey's arrest. After various hacks, including canceling Gill's credit cards, creating a personal ad in his name, fabricating a criminal record, and changing his payroll status to deceased, the duel remains a tie. Released on bail, Joey reveals the disc to Phreak, who is arrested the next day. Dade copies the disc so Kate and Serial Killer have untampered evidence. After Plague threatens to have Dade's mother incarcerated with a manufactured criminal record, Dade agrees to deliver Kate's copy of the disc.
So I do think it's quaint how cute and how innocent this movie portrays hacking. Most of the team's hacks, I think you can categorize them as, at least on screen, they're pretending these are harmless pranks. People are getting free cell phone calls. They're turning on the sprinklers in the school. They're changing their class schedule. It gets a little blurrier when you get with Dade and Kate's competition to harass Agent Gill. And the score, Gene, it's 60-60. So that means there's been 120 acts, like online terrorism on this poor dude. They're relentless. They tell him he's dead. You didn't mention the transvestites. Everyone, they're descending upon him with offers to lick and to suck and to stick things, and he's not having it. The credit cards, they involve his family where they're sitting out at dinner. He can't pay for it. And the hackers are portrayed as like the good guys. They're the activists. They're here against the man, against the corporations. It's evil. They're the ones who have some kind of a standard. They stand for something. So you already mentioned that you were into the BBS and you did a little bit of hacking your own. I mean, you hacked into a local community website there. So you're one I have to ask is, Today, everything is like ransomware. Everything is credit card numbers, personal data. It seems like today, yes, they hack big companies. Like they'll go hack Home Depot, Target, but it's to get credit card numbers. It looks like from this movie that back in the day, it wasn't about attacking the individual people for personal gain. It was more to bring down or make change in big institutions. Is that true?
Oh, yeah. I would say right now it's much more nefarious than it was back then. And I admittedly was not a very good hacker. Like you, Big D, I lost interest very quickly because I realized how much work it was. And I'm more bro than I like to admit. I would rather go out and play sports with my friends, meet girls, do stuff like that than spend all my time coding. I generally operated more as a phreaker. And that made me actually really happy to see the character of the Phantom Phreak because he truly did some phone tricks. Like they kept it true to the name, which was cool. None of my friends or I really did any financial damage to anyone. I mean, I guess I shorted the library out of a couple of cents, but it wasn't my book, so I don't know. What we mostly did was try to demonstrate skill, like in the movie. That was the whole idea: is can you pull something off? How good can you get? And the only time I really like scammed anyone or used this for like my own benefit was using a credit card generator to produce numbers that would be considered valid by a phone sex line. So if you remember back in the day, you could call into these like 900 numbers and you'd have to punch in your credit card number and then you could get access to the phone line and talk to some lady. What you would do with these generators, it was software that would just spit out numbers that were likely to be a valid credit card number. You do the call, punch in the code. Sometimes it worked, sometimes it wouldn't. But when it did, you basically got free phone sex. Because the software generated possible numbers, I never really knew whether I was actually billing a real person, like if that number connected to Dick Ebert in Florida, or if the phone sex line would later discover there was nobody with that credit card number and nobody could be billed.
I'm so happy. I'm not going to be alone in hell.
Yeah.
You're joining me. I destroyed someone's youth and showed them like an adult film star ejaculating on someone in Speed. Gene, forget about the money. How many families, husbands and wives, had a 2-hour phone sex charge show up? And the husband says, honey, it wasn't me. And she says, really? Some kid in Arizona just generated a random credit card number and charged it to you. Is that what you're telling me? You led to at least 1 or 2 divorces, maybe 15 fights, a kid growing up alone. Like there's a lot of victims in your crime, Gene.
They didn't label it something different. They literally would say like phone sex, 1-900 number on your phone bill. I mean, on your credit card bill.
Somebody had to be like, okay, what is this $55 bill? Hold on, let me see. What the hell is this charge? Or it could have been a family. Like you cause a lot of problems. This is not a victimless crime.
Overdrafts. It could have been. Yeah,
forget about the overdrafts, the fights. You labeled people. You gave people the stigma of you have an addiction. Gene, you have an addiction. Why do you have $500 in charges here?
God, the call wasn't that long.
It wasn't cheap.
No, it wasn't cheap. Yeah, it was cheap for me.
Yeah. The blood and the semen, they're on your hands, Gene. They're on your hands.
Generally speaking, that's the case. Big D, last week when we were previewing Hackers, I talked about the Angelina Jolie boob scene. And it's probably the most talked about scene in Hackers. The boob's out for like a second. It doesn't look like Angelina Jolie's boob. I was very confused by that. I have confirmation that it is. Beyond that scene, the second most talked about scene in Hackers is Fisher Stevens skateboarding alongside a limo to snatch a floppy disk out of Johnny Lee Miller's hand. It's like the most unforced error I've seen in cinematic history. And I remember, even as a kid, thinking the rest of this movie was so cool that was such a weird choice. This is a grown man, presumably fairly wealthy. He's got a limo driver, right? He's got the limo. He's going in the middle of the night. It looks like it's pretty damp out. Classic, we're in New York, so they got to have like that steam coming across the street and all that stuff. He's got the limo with the driver. He could be sitting in the limo. No. He decides that he wants to skateboard while holding on to the limo as he goes through New York City streets. And what made it even more laughable this time around is for the first time, I noticed that Fisher Stevens cannot ride a skateboard. Like he looks like he's going to fall off. He looks like Connor McLeod on that Porcupine Brother, like hover shoe sizer going through the city streets. And while we're on the topic, I should point out that Angelina Jolie also cannot rollerblade. Every time Hackers switches from her body double to actual Angelina Jolie, you can clearly see she's doing her absolute best not to fall over. And I got to ask, Why make this decision? Why is everybody rollerblading, skateboarding when they clearly cannot?
I think it's a mistake. They're trying to gain credibility that, yeah, look, these cools, we're a hacker. We're just like you. And I think it's a mistake with the Plague. They're trying to show I'm a hacker. I get it. I'm one of you. They needed him to be like scary. Have someone who was more polished, corporate, that you underestimate. Then they find out he is a hacker. Have him be like even Steven Dorff in Blade 2, I think it is, or Blade 1. Someone who's frightening, a little more polished. He's not on a skateboard, but you think he'll kill you. He's the boss man. He could roll up, roll the window down, and he could spit some jargon that you knew he was a hacker, but he doesn't need to show you how Johnny Cool he is on a skateboard.
For about 4 seconds there, I thought that you'd come up with a nickname for Steven Dorff and had started calling him even Steven Dorff. Then I was trying to remember if we had an episode on the podcast where we discussed calling him even Steven Dorff. Then I realized that you were just saying even Steven Dorff. Anyway, now we can move on with the podcast. Fun fact, Big D, Penn Jillette is in this movie.
Yeah, I know.
I really don't care, but I just wanted to avoid all the Facebook replies about us forgetting to mention that Penn Jillette was in this movie. Yeah, we saw him. No, I don't care. Another fun fact, the cast had several weeks of typing lessons in addition to their rollerblading lessons to make this movie. And you can tell because this is a movie with hackers. One thing they should be able to do is type. It is painful to watch. And if you think about it, this makes sense. Again, we're living in a different fucking world now. In 1995, if you knew how to type quickly, you were kind of an oddball. Like if you knew how to use the keyboard appropriately, not hunt and peck, you were kind of weird. I had that advantage because I had to take typing lessons starting in the second grade because my handwriting was so bad that teachers couldn't read it. So I had a bit of a leg up when the internet got here. But most of these actors, there's no reason they would be familiar with the keyboard.
No, and I love that these movies have to adapt. Whenever we're doing like a skateboard movie, we talk about the slow dance.
Yeah.
In Rad, where it goes in close and you see it's someone else doing it. GoldenEye has that hacker Boris. It's the same thing. When Boris is typing crazy, they have a hand stunt double where they zoom in on him typing. It looks like Jim Carrey from Bruce Almighty, that gif, where he's typing frantically. Here, it's laughable. It's funny to watch them type. I love it.
Fisher Stevens, at some point, he's even like using the keyboard like it's a musical keyboard. Like he's holding down notes. Like when he's trying to repair the Gibson, watch his hands. He's like literally pressing 8 keys down at the same time.
Or dude, Plague at the end, spoiler alert, where he looks like a DJ. Like in front of some kind of light up keyboard. Like he looks like he's mixing the next like techno hit. He's not typing fighting hackers on that giant, whatever that thing was.
Come at me. Come on,
yeah. Give me your best virus. Yeah, come on.
Type cookie, you idiot.
Yeah, type cookie.
He wanted a cookie. Kate, Lord Nikon, serial killer, and Dade discover the nature of Plague's code, and Dade confesses that he gave Plague the disc. Dade reveals his hacking history is zero cool, and he and Kate seek out Razor and Blade, producers of Hack the Planet, a hacker-themed TV show. The next morning, Dade, Kate, Nikon, and Serial rollerblade from Washington Square Park, evading the Secret Service by hacking the traffic lights. At Grand Central Terminal, they use payphones and acoustic couplers to hack the Gibson. At first, their attempts are easily rebuffed by Plague, but Razor and Blade have contacted hackers around the world who distract Plague long enough for Joey to download the file.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe, they're famous for, it took them 10 years to get up to Infinity Wars and the whole big Thanos thing. And you had people appearing in other movies. The characters would do a crossover. And as we're getting to the Washington Square part, it clicks in my head. We are missing an NYC crossover with hackers. It could have given us a gritty, dark final result of a film. This is light and kind of poppy and like, hey, everybody, let's be a hacker. It's cool. There's a different side of New York at this time, and this could have been really different. This is not AI involved, Gene. I came up with this myself. Within a few months of each other, 2 movies were filmed in Washington Square Park. Hackers and Kids.
Yes!
Let's have the 2 groups cross paths. Telly and the crew, they're out partying, they're out taking virgins, they're doing whatever they want with girls. And then you have the other crew of hackers. When the kids find out what's going on, they kind of join forces. Telly, he's trying to take Angelina Jolie's virginity. We could have
I
had
don't think she's a virgin in this movie.
No, we could have had a really dark crossover because the two of them are portraying a very different New York City for kids in 95.
I don't know about a crossover. It would have been cool to have the cast of kids just at Washington Square Park, like in the background, kind of like just like an Easter egg.
I wish I had a good editing rig for video because in there's a scene where Casper beats up a guy with a skateboard.
Yes.
You could make it seem like the skateboard attack and then you splice in the hackers running away. You could make it look like they're in the same place at the same time.
All right. If anybody wants to fund this project, write in host@shatpod.com.
Or if you're good at video and have it, just please go do it. And Gene, I know that you love this film. Talked about how the style, it's explained in trying to visualize something that most people didn't know, but they go over the edge. Just like anything, you can't go a little. You have to hyper stylize it. Let's give them the wild outfits. We're going to show the cyberpunk culture. Bleach hair, yeah. Crazy cut clothes, mismatched colors, the skates, the sunglasses. It's a nonstop flow of like handles, nonsensical techno babble, and cool sounding buzzwords from the 90s. The lines in this are cringeworthy. Hey, Gene, do you want to be elite? You got to do a serious righteous hack. Yeah, you don't get an identity until you have a handle. We're samurai. We're the keyboard cowboys. There's no right or wrong. There's only fun and boring. Yeah, sit on my interface. It's embarrassing. It's like skate culture and Gleaming the Cube.
Oh, I disagree, sir. This is the movie that made me want to major in computer science before I changed my major to journalism. Handles are called handles. I would argue that nobody would say elite. It's just elite. And in KRAD, it's actually 1337. You have to understand that the We Are Samurai keyboard cowboys was coming from the Plague. He's supposed to be a douchebag. He's like this aging hacker that nobody likes. He was never included in the subculture. And now the kids are like, oh, this fucking guy. He's a grown man who rides around on a skateboard pulled by a limousine eating green super rope, trying to make the kids think he's cool. He's sending gifts to Crash Override. Like, he's not cool. That's why he sees himself as a samurai, as a keyboard cowboy. I don't think the rest of them do.
Righteous hack, Gene. Righteous hack.
That's a righteous hack. And alongside Fisher Stevens, we get Lorraine Bracco playing Margot. And I need to know if something is just wrong with her at this point. She's the Ellingson executive. She's in cahoots with the Plague. Look, we saw her in Goodfellas. I'm a big fan of her in The Sopranos. She's Dr. Melfi. I was excited to see Lorraine Bracco as this like seemingly powerful woman in business. I was excited to see her as a villain. Instead, her entire role in this movie is wearing a bad wig, banging Fisher Stevens in his Cyberman playhouse. And by the time the hackers were hacking the Gibson, I was convinced that she was having a stroke on set. What's happening? Rabbit? Flu shot? Someone talk to me. Well, ma'am, a rabbit spreads like cancer. Cancer? They're going after the colonel. Colonel who? Well, it's the brain. Cancer? Brain? Brain cancer? Like, that's her actual script. What is she doing in this movie?
Yeah, but you have to feel bad. It's the same reason that I try to distance myself from my New York accent. It's hard to sound intelligent. Everyone ends up sounding like they're in the mob. So I thought at first that, yeah, she was like just dumb, but maybe like he was trying to set her up as the fall guy for like this whole crime. But yeah, she sounds like an idiot. But she could have, again, with that accent. That's why she fits in The Sopranos.
When we were in New Orleans, did I ever slip into accent when I got super drunk?
I don't know.
You were drunker. So
I couldn't remember the lyrics to Mr. Roboto. I don't even know where we ended up. So
okay.
No, I'm not the best at that.
After crashing the Gibson, Dade and company are arrested. Dade cryptically informs serial killer that he's tossed the disc in a trash can. Cryptically. It's trash.
Trash can.
Trash
can. Trash. Please.
Hack the planet. In the trash can.
Trash.
As Dade and Kate are being interrogated, Razor and Blade jam television signals and broadcast live video of serial killer revealing the plot and Plague's complicity. Plague is arrested while attempting to flee to Japan. Their names cleared, Dade and Kate begin a relationship. So, Big D, you talked about that personal style that these hackers have. And as much as I appreciate all the hackers' unmistakable sense of fashion, I got to question their outfit choices for this specific job. They are going to hack a supercomputer, and they're going to do it out of phone booths in Grand Central Station in the middle of Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
You know you've got about 5 minutes until the cops come looking for you. Maybe don't make the police's job a little bit easier, because each of our heroes shows up in an outfit that screams, I am a hacker. They plug in their laptops, which is each ornately designed, like you mentioned, with the spray paint and such. Each of them is preloaded with a Windows theme that matches their handle. Then, to make matters worse, Johnny Lee Miller puts on a goddamn augmented reality rig on his head. Matthew Lillard is screaming to release tension. And when the hacking starts getting like hot and heavy, the fucking phone booths start rotating. Of course they're going to get caught.
Why would you set up in a place that already has a police presence?
Right.
There is a police station in Grand Central. Also, Gene, you want to focus on the hack? Let's put you in those tiny marble corridors where sound echoes in the middle of rush hour. They would not have been able to hear each other. And it's for kids. Kids don't have an idea of how the world works. And this movie was made for teens, and the plot, it proudly demonstrates the teens' limited experience and what their perspective on the law and the civil process is. This group, Gene, is going to jail. They have broken countless laws, state and federal. Besides what they did harassing Gil and his family, they're all going to jail. But in their minds, they're like, yeah, serial killer, the broadcast, aha, gotcha. Like, this is their Columbo moment. This proves nothing. They broke the law. They're going to jail. And Gene, Computer Fraud Act and Abuse Act, wire fraud, theft of intellectual property, identity theft, conspiracy, all these kids are convicted felons and going to jail.
Yeah, but thankfully the cops are completely inept. You got Bunk from The Wire playing Agent Gill, but they went a little overboard with the bumbling cop trope. The police in this movie, they're running into people's homes, they're wildly pointing their guns at everything from the get-go. They're going to parties undercover. Whatever happened to that guy? Most egregiously, they don't pat anybody down. You've got your suspect. He was just involved in a hack. You're supposed to kind of, I'm guessing, check them for weapons, disks, any hacking devices. Crashover has got a disc in his back pocket. Nobody bothers to pat him down. These are just terrible cops.
Oh, and Gene, he didn't leave to join the hackers. He left to join J-Lo. That was Mark Anthony.
I thought he was bigger.
No, he's tiny. He's like a little rat. Yeah, he's a singer. So
like
he went off.
Little rat.
He is. If you go watch him, he looks like Splinter. He should play him in like the new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle movies. But you're talking about the cops here. I think there is a giant irony of this. We've had the hackers portrayed as the benevolent, the ones who are going to stand up for something, and the authorities are the ones who are going to protect. The establishment will protect us from these outlaws. If you look today, it is completely flipped. The establishment, they are now the hacking group. Who's out there doing most of these crimes? It's either state-run agencies or professional hacker groups. It's ironic how the police became what they were trying to eliminate in this movie.
I mean, it's kind of come full circle when you think about it, because, you know, if you look about the original hackers, you know, they were at institutes of higher education. The Air Force, like very early on, they were like, hey, listen, we need to have our own hackers to be able to test our own defenses, our cyber defenses and stuff. And I think they had like Tiger Team or something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Basically like hacking commandos or whatever, doing their thing. And so, I mean, yeah, it's a bummer. We can no longer hack with the same childhood innocence. And Big D, I mentioned earlier that I bought this 2-disc soundtrack on CD as a kid. I'm happy to report that in tandem with the movie Hackers, the soundtrack still holds up. I don't know what your impression was when you were listening to this, but Underworld, Stereo MCs, The Prodigy, Orbital, Massive Attack, Urban Dance Squad, like they just do it for me. I still put on Voodoo People during cardio. I still do drugs to Massive Attack. And aside from being good music, the soundtrack really helps the movie. This movie would have struggled without this music. If you imagine those hacking scenes or those rollerblading scenes without that high energy music that makes them feel exciting, they would really fall short. It'd be pretty bad. And what I couldn't fathom, though, is why the music suddenly sucked at the finale. So they're hacking the Gibson, and instead of this like high energy techno, we get this like sort of butt rocky guitar riff over like borderline ambient music as they're getting into the Gibson. That's the point where you should be slapping in your Prodigy, slapping in your Underworld. Fuck it, bring in some like Thrill Kill Cult, Chemical Brothers. Like, let's get the party started. Matrix got this part right.
No, I liked it. I thought it was good. I kept wishing that Beowulf had this soundtrack.
We don't have the budget for that.
I didn't even catch at the end. I didn't have a problem with it. I thought it was upbeat, energetic. It was time appropriate, and it fit the mood they were trying to push.
Well, now's the time of the podcast where we give our Shat score for Hackers. Our Shat score is our way of telling you how many wipes this movie takes to get off your respective butts. 0 wipes is a perfect movie. It is hacking in a world where every computer system has a graphic user interface and every hacker has supermodel looks. And 5 wipes is an absolute disaster movie. It is getting a sweet free laptop, but the catch is you have to watch personal videos from Fisher Stevens. I'll go first. Hackers is basically what it would be like if today they made a movie called TikTokers or Minecrafters. Imagine how hard that is to pull off, to make an interesting, exciting movie about such a niche subculture that most people don't know a lot about. The cast, it's really good looking. The movie is style over substance, I'll admit that, but I didn't really need it to be anything other than that to be entertaining. And ultimately, it still succeeded in doing to me now all the things it did to me when I was a kid. I still wanted to be one of these characters. Watching this movie, I wanted to get up off the couch and go start hacking some shit. I wanted to live in that world. It made me miss New York City. And whether I was laughing at it or with it, I just had a really good time with this movie. So I'm coming in at a healthy 1.75 wipes for Hackers.
So for me, this is a hard one because I can't hold against it. It was trying to predict the future. It was trying to visualize something that people didn't understand. And yeah, it got it wrong. It was laughable, but it was fun. You saw what they were going for. I think it's entertaining. Looking back, I can see why people now it's become a cult classic. It's hard for me to be harsh on it. So I can only do, I think, a 2.5 wipe. I think it's average. I think it's better than some of the other, trendy kid hobby films that we've done, like Rad or Gleaming the Cube or
Vision Quest.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's better than all of those. So I think at 2.5 wipes, I think it's fair. I'm not being harsh. I think it was one of those movies you'd go have fun. It would make you want to pick up a hobby that you quickly forgot about, and then the computer just sat in the closet, and then one day your parents sold it at the garage sale. So 2.5 for me.
All right, with 2.5 wipes from Big D and 1.75 wipes from me, that gives us an average wipe score of 2.125, so just a little bit above average and not too far off from Jody's prediction. So Big D, 2.125 for Hackers.
So, Gene, with a score of 2.125 wipes, that now ties this in the 148 spot with a bunch of movies. Home Alone, Major Leagues, The Goonies, Under Siege, The Sandlot, Dusk Till Dawn, Usual Suspect, A League of Their Own, Wedding Singer, Arthur, and Austin Powers' The Spy Who Shags Me.
This is one where I'd really like to hear from the audience. I feel like in some ways this is a superior movie to a lot of those. In other ways, I could see where somebody would say like a movie like The Sandlot, or Home Alone, those are classics. I don't think if you asked anybody if Hackers is a classic, they'd say yes, unless they were specifically interested in this very niche subgenre. Let's hear from you, hosts at shatpod.com. Let us know, or you can always go to shatpod.com and use the SpeakPipe feature to let us know what you think of Hackers.
I'm going to assume Ash is going to say like a half wipe movie, right?
I don't know about a half a wipe, but should definitely be, I would say, less than 2 wipes.
I think 1. Let's just factor it in, average it out. Let's see what would have happened with her 1 wipe.
It's dangerous territory. Ghost Ash scoring now, yeah?
Yeah, Ghost Ash, yeah.
2.75 plus
and this
2.5
doesn't count, people.
equals
This is just a...
divided by 3. That would be a 1.75 wipe, so it'd be the same as mine.
Okay, so at a 1.75, that would then tie this film with I'm Gonna Get You Sucker Friday and Drop Dead Gorgeous, Halloween 4, and Indiana Jones Temple of Doom.
For a while there, I thought people wouldn't really mind, but as soon as you say Hackers and Temple of Doom in the same breath, mutiny, absolute mutiny.
Yeah, I'm comfortable where it is.
Well, there you have it, Jody. 2.125 wipes for Hackers. Big D, what do we have coming up next week?
Gee, next week, I'm very excited. When the mayor of a crime-ridden city loosens the restrictions on entrance into the police academy in order to get more cops on the streets, all manner of oddball characters enlist to join the force. Among the cadets are Suave Mahoney, hulking Hightower, and beautiful Thompson. The sound effect generator Jones, who all have to show their initiative and courage when they are faced with a tough situation out on patrol. Commissioned by Adam R., legendary commissioner. And man, this is going to be a good one to go back and see just how wild this film was. And it's about time we had some Steve Guttenberg in our lives.
I'm really nervous about this one after the backlash that we got from Airplane for my score. And I will say this for you listeners out there. As a child, this was one of my all-time favorite movies. So I'm going into it with a big, full heart. and a smile on my face. And I'm hoping, I'm praying that this one holds up.
Oh, I'll do everything to keep you in that good warm zone, Gene. I'll light some scented candles, give you a back rub, and open up some Pinot Grigio.
Will you just promise to do sound effects the whole time with your mouth?
I will.
For those of you that don't know, he was actually reenacting the sounds that the VHS hands were making in Hackers. That was really good, Big D. It cues up perfectly. Play this podcast over the movie. You'll see. Well, thank you to Super Commissioner Adam R. for the upcoming movie. Thank you to Jody in Iowa for commissioning one of my favorite movies, Hackers. Thank you to all the commissioners who make this podcast possible. That concludes this week's episode of Shat the Movies. Be sure to follow us on social media, share with a friend. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, and Instagram at Shat the Movies. Email us, hosts@shatpod.com. Support the podcast by shopping our Amazon affiliate link, buying our merch, or commissioning your own movie. Find all information by visiting our website, shatpod.com. Also, check out our sister podcast, Shat on TV. We review TV series such as Lovecraft Country, Westworld, True Detective, Taboo, American Gods, Game of Thrones, and Watchmen. Find all information on our website, shatpod.com/TV, wherever fine podcasts can be found, including Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Stitcher, and YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, and if you stop by Apple Podcasts, please leave a 5-star review. It helps the podcast grow. On behalf of my co-host, Big D, I'm Gene Lyons. Join us next week for the following movie.
Crime. The city was full of it.
Free TV!
Desperate measures were needed.
Want you to go to the police academy.
The police academy is such a dangerous place.
Honey, don't worry.
Desperate measures were taken.
I'm joining the police force! Ah!
The mayor says we have to take this riffraff.
I'm trapped here?
Oh, yes. We all are.
What about guns? When do we get guns?
You will be schooled in firearms, police procedures, local laws, and many, many other things.
High-speed driving. And self-defense.
I need a volunteer.
That's me! I love it.
Police Academy.
Where did you get this gun?
My mom gave it to me.
Mister, I am warning you, hot tower!
They're lean. Mean.
Does the radio bother you? 5. I can turn it down.
Obscene. Each and every one of them striving to defend.
You make me sick.
Thank you, sir. I make everybody sick.
See the thighs?
Or upend.
Come on. I haven't got all day. The thighs.
And now that they're ready for the real world, crime is no longer the #1 problem. They are.
Can you get my kitty cat out of the tree?
No problem, ma'am.
Police Academy.
Among them, the cadets are suave Casey Malone.
Carrie Mahoney.
Yeah. Our suave cadets, Carrie Mahoney, hulking Moose Hightower.
Moses.
Beautiful. Fuck.